Okay, welcome to the regular meeting of the Midcoast Community Council for June 9th, 2025. Connie, could you please call the roll?
Certainly. Kevin?
Here.
Scott?
Here.
Kimberly?
Here.
Claire?
Here.
Chris?
Here.
Connie? Here. Gus? Not present.
Thank you. We'll start with reports from government officers. Are there any government officers here to make a report? I did get a notification from Half Moon Bay that they had a family emergency and will not be here, but they don't have much to update tonight anyway. So I guess we will move on, and if somebody comes in, we can have them update us when they get here. So let's see, I need the agenda. The next item on the agenda is public comment. So we're open for 3 minutes of anybody who wants to say anything about anything that's not on the agenda tonight, which is, hold on, gotcha. Which is, what's on the agenda tonight is parking on Highway 1, outreach and tourism, and you have something other than those three things. Please go to the podium.
So my name is Birgitta Bauer and I live in El Granada. I want the address, is that?
No.
Can you pronounce your last name again for me?
Last name Bauer, B.
Bauer.
As in boy.
Okay, thank you.
So I wanted to bring up the Aaron's Beach Inn project and ask the MCC that you put it on the agenda and discuss how it would impact the coast side. I created a petition that has now 430 plus people opposing this specific building as it is. But in my view, there should be nothing eliminating the view corridor between Sam's and the beach hotel. The stretch from Highway 1 from Montera to the end of Half Moon Bay doesn't have a whole lot of breaks where you have a view of the horizon with the ocean and the sky meeting. I think anyone looking out on an uninterrupted view like that can feel how it works like a mental medicine. You exhale. It's the essence of what brought many of us here. Even if the property is in Half Moon Bay, the view of the ocean is the essence of El Granada. We should not allow any further blocks of this view. It's enjoyed by the people driving into El Granada and passing Circus Beach. It's treasured by residents driving on Highway 1 or walking, biking on Avenue Alhambra and Oxford Road. 25 years ago, a two-story hotel was proposed here. There was a list of issues. One comment was, the traffic is an unbelievable situation. But the main one was negative impact on the view. The project was rejected by the Half Moon Bay Planning Commission and the MCC voiced concerns then, and I hope they will do it again. We are stewards of the land and have to be careful of what it is we lose when we let new construction go up. What are we gaining with another hotel? And what are we losing? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to make an announcement but I think I will make it now, that we do not have any jurisdiction over this because it is in Half Moon Bay, this proposed hotel on the El Granada waterfront. But there is a meeting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock at the Half Moon Bay Emergency Services District office at 9 o'clock in the morning. It is not online. But if anybody wants to attend, they're welcome to attend.
The MCC did attend the meetings of the.
Yeah, we hear you. We hear you.
So, we were there.
Right now, we're not doing anything except we're letting people know they can go to this meeting. So we'll see it. We'll follow it. And there were other public comments on things not on the agenda?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Dan Haggerty, 13-year former member of this MCC. I wanted to just take a moment and remind just not sure the awareness of some of the new members. That within our MCC bylaws. There's a clear statement that there should be a free and open discussion on issues pertaining to the community. And that's one item. The other thing is that the community is completely clearly defined within our bylaws, that it is not only the residents of the Midcoast Community Council, but it's also the visitors that come. So the decisions need to be considered in both the residents and what's best for the visitors. And the fact that you have, what we have here tonight, item 5B, or I'm sorry, 5A, you're allowing
Dan,
35 minutes.
that's on the agenda.
No, I'm talking about the time and as it's related to the bylaws. You're allowing probably the largest, most complex issue on the coast right now. And you're only giving it 35 minutes.
Let's see how it goes.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Was there somebody else? No? Okay. Marisol is now here. Marisol, did you have a report for the Board of Supervisors?
Hi, everybody. Thanks. Thanks, Claire. I just wanted to mention that our office sent a letter to Mr. Pruitt, whom I see is here present. And the letter was just requesting confirmation that the MCC and GCSD be involved and coordinated, that they be included in meetings or briefed. And so Mr. Pruitt confirmed that, and so we just wanted to thank him for the collaboration.
Thank you, Marisol. Can you send us a copy of that letter?
Okay, I'll ask our staff.
Thanks, Marisol.
Any questions for Marisol? Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is consent agenda, and I believe the only thing on the consent agenda is the minutes from the last meeting. Is there a motion to approve it? You want to pull them? Okay. So we will consider them at the end of the meeting.
We can. I want to fold them because there are some things that need to be corrected.
That's what we can do at the end of the meeting.
Probably too many to do in the meeting, so I'd like to fold them to the next meeting.
Well, we can't make a decision on that until the end of the meeting. Okay, so we're ready to go into the meat of the agenda. And the first item on the agenda is listening session about the issues involving parking along the stretch of Highway 1 near, between Coronado and what's the other name, the other street, the Surfers Beach area. And Kimberly is going to be leading that, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. Can everybody hear me?
It's really hard to hear you. It's really hard to hear you.
Okay, is this better?
It's really light.
How's this?
That's better.
I don't know if I can shout the whole time, but I'll try. We got to this much quicker than I thought we would. So, for this listening session tonight, the agenda says that this is about parking along Highway 1 and related areas. And so what we envisioned is that this discussion or this listening session would encompass comments about parking alternatives for access to Surfers Beach, including several parking plans and proposals that are currently put forward, including the GCSD Park, which has some parking plans included in it, and also a Harbor District proposal for parking at the north end of the south end of the Burnham Strip. Sorry, the north end of the Burnham Strip. and anything else related to the area in terms of parking. So that is the focus. It's rather broad. We'd like to hear how people feel about some of the proposals. We'd like to hear your ideas about how to solve this problem, in terms of parking for Surfers Beach and the general area and how it will impact the neighborhood. And then our hope is that at the end of this listening session, we would take what we've heard and craft a letter to all the stakeholders to try and bring them together to consider the needs of the community in all these plans, and hopefully encourage them to come together to talk about all these plans as a whole, as opposed to each thing and it's one little piece, because they're all related and they all impact. Each project impacts.
Distraction.
I'm looking
What is that?
towards the store.
He's
I'm at a
working.
couple of landmarks there. So I'm
Edmund.
Can you continue them?
Kimberly, can you answer a quick question? Will there be an opportunity for council members to bring up concerns as it pertains to the agenda item?
So tonight is a listening session, and what I thought we would do is just listen to the community for the most part. That's the focus. And what I was going to say is at the end of it, what we'd like to do is take all of that information and craft a letter to stakeholders, sort of to bring back to the council to communicate the needs of the community and how we'd like all of these pieces to work together to look at the whole picture, not each piece just on its own.
If it could answer you just a little bit more, I think we're envisioning this as an extended public comment session
Okay.
where we're just going to listen. And at the next meeting, then we get to talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, if we have time, then, if there's time, then I might go around and just ask each council member to pull out one point they heard that they would like to see amplified in the letter. But other than that, we would,
I tried to put my community hat on and had one little one, but I'm happy to either email it or wait till the next meeting, whatever works.
okay, great.
Thanks.
There are also a bunch of emails and a bunch of social media posts attached to this agenda. And you might want to look at those. There's also more that we had from before that they will also be looking at.
Which I was going to mention. So yes, what's posted there is not everything. I posted as much as I could. There were some other things that came in that I wasn't able to post, up to the meeting time. But I would also like to draw people's attention to comments we received at our March 12th meeting. Those are contained in the meeting minutes, and there were also some other comments received by email to the MCC on some of these issues. So it's not just what we received for this meeting, it's also the input we received on these topics over a couple of meetings. So with that, I'd like to open the floor for the public to make their comments. Each comment should be 2 minutes in length, if possible. And right now I only see 2 hands raised, one in the room and one on Zoom.
Just got a text message from Susie, who has been communicating with Miss Erin Claire. She's on, but she says she can't see her, so I know she wants to be called on.
Okay, so,
Susie Perkins.
okay.
Yeah, I don't see a place for me to raise my hand. Can I speak? It's Susie Perkins.
If you could wait till
Okay.
I start the comment, and I'll just tell people what order they're going in.
Great.
Right now, I have 1 hand raised in the room and I have 2 hands raised on Zoom. So I'll start within the room.
Are you gonna read the comments that the MCC council that the public cannot see? Can you break it down, give us some information as to what you received that the public can't see?
There's about 30 comments. We can't go through all of them, but they are on the website.
On the link,
They're on the link.
on the agenda. Under
And they're gonna update this.
Messages are on the website?
With the exception of some that just came in.
Okay,
Um,
so,
So Dan, did you want to comment for this item?
Yeah.
Would you like to step to the podium?
Can I just ask about the timer? Is that displayed or is it active or are we doing that?
What I'd like to get a sense of, if there are people who want to speak, could you raise your hand on Zoom so that I have a sense of how many people want to speak?
3.
And Susie said she couldn't get hers to work.
So
3 plus Susie.
3 plus Susie.
That's not very many.
Well,
I mean, if
Let's
that's
see.
all there is, then I would like, then people could have 3 minutes, I think.
okay.
Okay, Dan.
Okay, Dan Haggerty, Elgranada, former 13-year MCC member. I want to say, thanks for letting this be this session happen. I believe the existing parking environment at Surfers Beach is not perfect, but currently provides maximum parking for community members and visitors. A car pulling to the side and parking immediately provides the most efficient way of getting it off of the broader traffic circulation system versus having cars driving around in circles and making the wrong turns and getting stuck and just jamming up the rest of the traffic. This is the most efficient ways for a car to pull off, stop. Also at Surfers Beach, it provides excellent viewing of surfing, whale watching, and sunsets. I believe the proposed changes will be generally unacceptable to the majority of users, community members and visitors, who has historically benefited from this access ease. There is plenty of room for cars to park well off the highway at many locations between Coronado and Capistrano, with bike lanes or not. Where there is not sufficient room, minor extension of shoulder can be made or minimize a no parking zone in these areas. The multimodal off-road Class 1 bike pedestrian trail should be prioritized to continue from Coronado to Capistrano on the east side of the highway. This has always been in the plans, and we have the existing coastal trail on the west side. This concept provides for better safety and enjoyment of tranquil cycling use. The GCSD's proposal to reduce and relocate the existing informal parking lot at the skate ramp will have an enormous negative impact on the beach access and should not be allowed. This informal lot provides a rural feel with minimal signs and no impact to the dark sky, no light poles. It just gives the country feel, and that's what most people want. The loss of the parking on Obispo, west of the firework Station 41, due to the proposed sidewalk there, will also take substantial needed beach parking. However, this issue is much bigger than just the immediate Surfers Beach area, and there should be another agenda item that is all encompassing. For now, the many negative impacts regarding the proposed North Burnham Strip parking lot, a growing number of visitors and community members are in opposition because the inherent and undeniable safety and traffic flow issues from forcing an unnecessary highway crossing at this location. 2, the obvious scenic degrading and takeaways to the wildlife habitat, including proposed added impactful lighting elements. And 3, the internal Elgranada additional safety and circulation impacts. And it appears that the open space intentions of this whole Burnham Strip are being completely ignored for the benefit of revenue generation on the public taxpayer cost and all users of Highway 1. A smarter parking solution needs to be accommodated. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
And
Okay, anyone else in the room? Seeing no hands, I'm going to go to Zoom. First will be Steve Terry, then Jane, then Susie, and then Greg, and then Melinda. So, Steve?
Yeah, hey, thank you, Melinda and MCC. First of all, I second the comments I just heard by the previous speaker. I also want to say that this issue about parking is really a huge systemic issue that will affect traffic and everything throughout El Granada and on Highway 1 for both residents and visitors. So we don't have a clear plan. There's no clear plan in place, and any plan is going to have to involve multiple agencies, not just the Harbor District, but Caltrans, GCSD. Ideally, well, Half Moon Bay will need to be involved probably. And the supervisor, the county should be involved at the supervisor level. And that means MCC should also take kind of a lead role in that. I think that's my opinion. I hope, I would like to see MCC get in on that and sort of take that lead role if possible, whatever can be done to do that. Talking to Supervisor Mueller or whatever it takes. There are possible solutions here that maybe aren't being discussed or Caltrans doesn't want to discuss, like if you reroute the bike trail through the side of the highway, like the trail up and down the coast that's being built already, then that might obviate the need for bike lanes along Highway 1, and then still provide for parking there. GCSD could expand their parking lot potentially. They may not be willing to, but they could potentially expand their parking lot by creating a section along Highway 1 in sort of the back, if you will, or the ocean side of their park that would allow lots and lots of parking for folks to go into. So that'd be another possibility. Or if we can't do the trail through Burnham Strip, the bike trail through Burnham Strip, maybe there can be bike trails and parking, because there seems to be enough right of way to be able to do that. So these are all possibilities that I think need to be explored more, rather than just Caltrans saying, hey, we're putting bike lanes in, no more parking, and Coastal Commission saying, go find 75 or 85 slots or whatever they said. And to be sure, though, the proposed parking lot at the Harbor District proposed parking lot is not only extremely unpopular by the comments that have been heard at MCC and the petition that's ongoing with 700-800 people opposed to it, but that won't provide any substantive relief to the parking at Surfers Beach because it's way too far away. If that was the solution for parking at Surfers Beach, what it would do is it would drive those visitors into the community of El Granada, up into the streets, parking the streets on Portola, El Granada Elementary School, which actually isn't a bad solution. And so it would extremely aggravate the people living in that area. And then it would slow traffic down because of that stupid crosswalk. If you want to have a crosswalk, put it at Portola, where it is now, where there kind of informally is now, because that feeds those businesses. And that would be a great place for crosswalk if you're going to do it at all. I probably went over my 3 minutes. Yeah, it looks like my 3 minutes just up, so I'll cut it right there. But thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Steve.
Jane, you're next.
Yes, hi. Thank you for discussing this topic. I signed the petition. I sent you a three or four sentence thoughts on this. I think one of my biggest concerns is, I'm kind of a news junkie. I know pretty much what's going on, but so many local things you hear about so late. And the Caltrans decision to put the bike lanes on Highway 1 instead of talking to us about routing the bike lanes into the neighborhood, which I think would be really wonderful. I could see the bikes coming through, the kids watching them and being inspired, even famous bicyclists. I mean, this could be a plus for the neighborhood. I'm against this losing our view. As far as the park, I feel it's a community park. I think Barbara made it pretty clear that that's the intention. And a lot of people in El Granada walk. A lot of us walk through the medians to get to the post office. I think if the park had drop-off zones for people who have a problem walking in disabled areas, I don't see that we need huge amounts of parking. I think a lot of people, I hear people bicycling and walking to the pumpkin festival. It's becoming, and that's something we want to encourage people to stay healthy. So anyway, I don't know if it's too late. I hope it's not too late to encourage Caltrans to get those bicycles into the neighborhood and keep the parking on Highway 1. And when I talked to Dan, who I want to say thank you for, because Dan's always been a strong voice for the environment. But, when we talk about possible scenarios where we've got tour buses parked over there in a new parking lot that the Harbor District's proposing, I can't even imagine the fumes, or as they wait 45 minutes for the last person to struggle back up from their lunch and that kind of thing. So I think we need to protect what we have that's beautiful and unique, and that's the environment that we have. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jane. Susie, you're next.
Yes, thank you. I am coming to the MCC as a resident of El Granada and the coastside for over 30 years. We have gathered over 750 community member signatures opposing the plan to develop a parking lot on the Burnham Strip. And I have personally reached out to the Harbor District via email twice with my concerns and received only a stock response of received. To date, we have been blocked from having a voice at the table. We are now looking to the MCC to serve as our advocate to assist in this matter. There are existing parking structures, such as El Granada Elementary School, that are underutilized or planned, such as the GCSD Community Center, which should be considered and evaluated prior to forcing this plan on El Granada. Both of these locations have easy access to existing infrastructure, including pathways, crosswalks, and streetlights that will not add to the congestion that can be difficult during peak tourist days. Creating an additional crosswalk across Highway 1 between Surfers Beach and the harbor will undoubtedly cause significant traffic problems and can be very dangerous. If the Harbor District only needs overflow parking for 3 to 4 weekends out of the year, could the Harbor District own lots north of Sam's on the west side of Highway 1 be used for overflow parking on peak tourist days without causing traffic problems? We hope that by coming to the MCC and asking for you to advocate for us, we might be able to have a seat at the table to voice our concerns and fears about this project that will impact our community significantly. And thank you for allowing us to have this conversation now.
Susie, can I ask you for your last name, please?
Perkins,
Perkins?
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Susie. Greg Diegues, and then Melinda.
Thanks, Kimberly. I didn't have time to talk to Dan, but I support his concerns in the main. I wanted to spend a minute talking about the decision criteria that should bear on this. Obviously, dark skies is one issue. Maintaining the natural and rural character as much as possible is another issue, and the views. There's also the issue of creation of more impermeable surfaces, potentially causing extra flooding of Highway 1. You know, the highway is already fragile. There's the impact on traffic, both Highway 1 and in El Granada. There's a key issue with what's the long-term plan for Highway 1. It has been rumored, for example, that Caltrans is going to create a causeway to deal with the sea level rise and flooding issues there. There's also the issue of the safety of the route for the bike trail, which I agree would be safer away from Highway 1 in part, perhaps going inland to Obispo. There's the issue of a crosswalk for those carrying surfboards. I know I measured it once, and it's 2,000 feet round trip if you ask the surfers to go down or up to a traffic light instead of just crossing where they park. And then there's the question of, are there underutilized alternative spaces? I realize there are jurisdictional constraints here, but the one thing I would point to is you cannot plan incrementally in this crowded area, or you're going to box yourself into a conflicted mess. The first thing we have to know is what Caltrans is planning in the face of sea level rise and stormwater for that section of Highway 1. Only once we understand that, the long-term plan, can we rationally plan for the rest of it. And I agree that the MCC is a key stakeholder, and I strongly encourage what you're doing, and thank you for involving the community in this dialogue.
Thank you, Greg. Melinda McNaughton.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to say that Dan and I and Steve and Kevin Lansing are the original authors of this petition against the proposal of the parking lot on the Burnham Strip. And we do, as authors of the petition, have spoken to a lot of the people who have signed the petition, and we do want to be at the table in discussions about this. And we welcome the MCC to be included in that, of course. So thank you for your support that you've given us so far and allowing us to speak about this at the meeting. My understanding of the issue about the parking on Highway 1 is that Caltrans decided to put bike lanes on the road, and therefore it was decided with the bike lanes, it would be too unsafe to have parking remain on the highway. So I agree with everybody that's spoken before me that the parking issue has to be figured out, and the bike lanes, class 1 bike lanes going through El Granada or the Burnham Strip would be a great answer so that the parking could remain on Highway 1 there, right next to Surfers Beach. Because if you move the parking around away from Surfers Beach, people are still going to be up in the neighborhood trying to find parking to get across at that stoplight right there. So, and then traffic jams are going to ensue if we put parking on the other side of the strip as the Harbor District proposes. The other part I thought as a solution would be for GCSD to keep their current parking lot that is there with the skate park. Just keep it as is, because that it sounded like they were proposing to build the park over that and make a smaller parking lot. So if that's got sufficient parking right there, it's good to keep that right there. And the other idea is for the Harbor District, if they're wanting overflow parking and they don't feel that that parking lot is sufficient across the street on the west side, which seems to be empty most of the year except for maybe 3 days, they could have overflow parking created in potentially the Oceano parking lot, which is not always full either, and beyond that, where there's actually a lot beyond that, a dirt lot beyond that. So thank you again for bringing this up for discussion, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, Melinda. Anne and then Laurel. Anne Swanberg.
I'm not going to be as articulate or nearly as well informed as the other speakers from our community today. So I want to just say I really, really appreciate all of you who have spoken and the members of the MCC. I've lived in El Granada since 1983 with dirt roads, and I've seen a lot of changes, obviously. This one really blows my mind when I heard that there was proposal to have Alhambra have turn into a parking lot there by Spangler's. You know, it's already used as a frontage road to the highway with people speeding. You know, this is a residential neighborhood. So I'm sure that I speak for hundreds of other El Granadans right now in a strong opposition, so much so that, like I said, it blows my mind. And again, great gratitude to all of you who are so well informed with the details of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Laurel Frischman.
Yes, I'd just like to add, as another person that is concerned about this parking issue, I am in total agreement with everything that Dan and Susie, Jane and Melinda have said so far. I am disappointed in the lack of planning for parking at Surfers Beach when they created the bathroom set. And so if they're saying that this parking on the Burnham Strip at that end is for Surfers Beach, I think that that is, I don't think that that's the answer, because people are not going to park that far away and haul their children and their chairs and their coolers down to the beach. There you're going to find a way to park in our neighborhood. The other thing is that I am not quite so sure what the harbor's intent is for that parking. They're talking about it being overflow parking. However, they've also talked about it being revenue generating. So does that mean they're going to put parking meters in there? Does that mean ultimately they're going to build something there that would generate revenue? They own a lot of that part now as it is. I asked them, did they purchase that property with the intent of making a parking lot? And they said no. So I don't know what their original intent was to purchase it. So I am just very, very appreciative for you at the MCC to allow us to voice our concerns right here and to please, please, please advocate for the residents of El Granada against this idea of the parking in that beautiful Burnham Strip. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel. I don't see any other hands. Does anyone else want to comment on this item? If so, please raise your hand now. Seeing none, I'm going to move on and pass this back to Claire.
Shall we do what you said, which was to go around the council and ask for like key points to be included in the letter? Or do we have time for that?
We definitely have time, so I can do that. So at this point, we'll go around the council and I'll ask you for what your key takeaway that you'd like included in the letter would be. Kevin, I'll start with you.
Hi, Jim, I'm glad that you are on the Zoom call, and I'd like to say thank you for participating in this discussion. However, I think our presence here today is kind of a testament to the fact that there's a conflict between the idea of the Harbor District saying that they're open to public comment, yet so many of the public, hundreds of the public, have gotten no responses, stock responses back. And I think if the MCC is going to facilitate a fruitful conversation, we need to ensure that you are coming to the table in good faith and that you will offer responses. I think as an MCC member, also as a community member, I'm concerned about this parking lot. I'm questioning whether or not there's a correlation between this parking lot and some of the initial plans stating that they're going to offer 72-hour parking permits, and the fact that there's talk of a hotel that would require overnight parking. And have a very specific question to you. Is there any correlation between the Harbor District taking up parking for Caltrans, then offering 72-hour parking permits and possible monetization of this parking structure and a planned hotel? A lot of community members want this answered. It's gone unanswered. And then to be frank, I think if we're going to invite more than just the 4 authors of this petition, but key stakeholders to the table, it only works if everybody's willing to answer the questions in real time. It really, it cannot be a tokenized project to feel good. We need people to answer sincere, very serious questions from our community.
Kevin, I'm sorry, but so what I wanted to focus on was what you wanted us to put in the letter, not to ask attendees to respond to questions.
I want that put into the letter, and I think that I was really clear, actually,
Okay.
Kimberly, so.
Okay, it sounded like you were addressing a particular.
No, I'm saying that the process, if we're moving forward, it shouldn't be tokenized. That's what I would like to have in the letter. I would like to also include the fact that if we're going to show up at the table, if we're going to create an opportunity for the stakeholders to come to the table, that they should come to the table and be willing to answer the questions and not pass the buck.
Okay, thank you. Scott?
So I only have one point to make, and I thought that Laurel's comment about the bathroom, why have the bathroom if there's nobody that's going to use it any longer, right? So that seems odd to me. And that's my only comment from what we heard this afternoon.
Okay, thank you. Claire?
I think my point of view on this, I really appreciate people talking. We really need to hear you. And so thank you. But my biggest concern is that this is a really complicated situation. There are so many players involved, and we've been struggling all year how the MCC can have any leverage, because we really have no leverage except by persuasion. And I think this is a really good start. Everybody, all the players, including the Coastal Commission, Caltrans, and everybody were invited to this to listen in tonight. 2 people from GCSD and the Harbor District are here listening. And they will all be invited back when we discuss the letter. And hopefully what we're gonna do is not necessarily solve this, but get the people that need to solve it to solve it. And I think this is a really good first step to have the decision makers hear what the people are saying and that there really is a problem, because I'm not sure they all know that there's a problem. That's what I'd like to have included.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I would like make sure the letter focuses on some of the multiple issues that are embedded in the question of parking, so that we don't, the community can have its voice heard, that this is not just a parking issue, but I think Greg summarized these multiple issues best. He mentioned dark skies, impervious surfaces, sea level rise and stormwater planning, and the Caltrans likely inevitable use of much of its right of way as an alternative or a way to deal with how Highway 1 is going to continue to move past Surfers Beach, where it gets narrow, and shoreline retreat is going to continue. So all of these things actually fold into all of the parking issues and parking proposals that are going on here. And the only way to really address all of it is to have everybody sitting down and working through all of these issues jointly.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Gus?
That last bit was the bit I was basically going to say. Like, I think our role in this is to facilitate discussion that gets to a solution that's workable for everybody, which I don't think we have today. And to the extent we can, if this issue is derivative of the harbor's need to increase its revenue, then anything we can do to help brainstorm alternative ways that they can do that, I think we should do.
Okay. Thanks, Gus. Connie?
Thanks everybody who spoke. It's really helpful to hear from the community. And I would just again emphasize similarly to Chris and Gus, what Greg has said as well. I think we have to start at the beginning, and if it is Caltrans, then we really need to emphasize getting them to come up with publicly announcing what their plans are and to document that so that people can respond to that, because it is the first step, I think. And so I just want to make sure we emphasize that. We need to hear from them as soon as possible before other decisions can be made.
Thank you.
I saw Len's hand up also earlier, but I don't.
Yeah.
Len is no longer a resident of the Midcoast.
But he can talk.
Well, that's why I didn't call on him, because we had already gone through public comment, but if you want to reopen it for Len, we can. Len, do you want to speak?
Len has a lot.
I'm here to talk a little bit, just a quick update.
Okay.
I think the conversation and the focus here is both strong and specific, and it's completely out of phase with the process of the highway work that's we're at. Basically, the MCC, as well as both the county and the city, both approved CDPs for the project on the roadway, including the bicycle lanes. It was appealed to the Coastal Commission. The Coastal Commission took what's called the de novo process. That is, they took charge of these, not the county CDPs, and they put forward what they felt was necessary to be done, which was 75 parking spaces to support Surfers Beach. And as I understand it, they'll have a meeting between the Coastal Commission and the Caltrans staff to assess where things are at within the next week or two. But basically, that process is completely offline. In addition, the work on the multimodal trail points to the long-range plan that Caltrans had said would be coming out and due in June, late June, for the long-term picture. They've since postponed that. It's going slow track, and that won't be made available to the county and the public until early August. So those are two documents that are out there being worked on by Caltrans that are important. And the Coastal Commission is in a position where it feels it has the authority to basically define what's done now that it's been appealed and they've issued their presentation. I've put Kimberly in charge with Melba Policio, who's our representative there, and I suggest she get in touch with that individual just to get them on the same page as everybody else here.
Thank you, Lynn. And I have been in touch with Melba.
Just a very brief response to, not to go back and forth, but just because there was a little bit of an inaccuracy, it's not complete. It's accurate, it's not complete.
Sure, Dan, can you keep it to 1 minute?
So what Len just said is true, that the appeal, et cetera, CDP, et cetera, yes. What he did not tell the community right now is that when this whole thing happened, it was just an overwhelming package of all different things. There's nobody, even the MCC, could not filter through all the elements of it. So essentially, they steamrolled us, and nobody even knew what was happening. I was there. Len, thank you.
Thank you.
Wait,
Just a moment, please. So I'm hesitant to keep going around back to people who've already commented. But since Dan went and Lynn went, Steve, 1 minute.
Thank you. I'll keep this very brief. Thank you. I'll keep this very brief. I just want to say that but to Len's comments, and maybe he knows the answer, but I remember seeing in the Coastal Commission report that there's an upcoming realignment plan, a realignment study for Highway 1 in that area because of erosion. And it makes, they even said this is a temporary solution. Whatever we do is a temporary solution for all our bickering here that we're doing. And so I wonder how much sense it even makes to do anything until Caltrans decides what the realignment plan for Highway 1 is. That's that should be part of the story, is the whole realignment. Maybe Lynn knows where that's at now.
What the Coastal Commission said about that is it's a study from Caltrans that will be released. It has a long-term view of extended review and leading to projects some years down the road. So it's basically in their goals, but it's offline from this plan, which is to put the Class 2 bicycle lanes in, and that we're talking at here. So they're two separate ones.
Thanks, Lynn.
Good night.
And Kimberly.
Sure, Claire.
Caltrans was at our last meeting. They declined to come talk about this with us now because they feel like they have some decision-making they need to make before they talk to us. We've been trying to tell them that there are decisions being made fairly soon, we think, among some of the stakeholders. And we would like them to come talk to us before the decisions are made, but not after, because we would like to be part of the process. We would like the community to be part of the process. So we're working on that. I do think that's an issue.
Okay.
Susie just said she has another question.
Okay, hold on. Susie, can you keep it to 1 minute?
yes, I can keep it to 1 minute. So Len, are you saying that the requirement for 75 parking spots is already a requirement? I understand that, but the requirement for 75 parking spots on the Burnham Strip is not a done deal.
That's correct. Just 75 spots.
Yes, we
to address
understand
surface
that.
use parking. Exactly.
Yeah, we understand that. But I don't understand why the Harbor District thinks they have to solve Caltrans' parking space problem.
The other party that could be involved there is the county, and at this point, they have not come forward to have a conversation with Caltrans.
Yeah, I think bottom line is we don't understand why the Harbor District thinks they have to solve Caltrans's parking space problem. None of us can figure out why that's Caltrans, why it's the Harbor District's problem to solve.
So I'm going to cut it off there.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. At first, I just want to reassure Lynn and others that I am in touch with the Coastal Commission staff on this, and we'll have more to report at the next meeting. But I am stepping into that role as the MCC liaison to the Coastal Commission on these things, and will be reporting on them as it goes forward. And Gus is also one of the other members who is assigned this topic. So we are doing what we're supposed to be doing. So I just want to reassure you that there are conversations happening. Is there anyone else who wants to comment or speak on this issue before we close the item? I see no one in the room and no one on Zoom. So in that case, we're going to move on to the next item, and I'm going to hand the gavel back to Claire.
Okay, so thank you to everybody. This was very useful, and we will continue this discussion probably at our next meeting with a letter to consider to all the stakeholders. I don't know if I should say this now, but we got a referral for a pre-app workshop for the Granada GCSD Burnham Strip Park. So that will also be coming up. So we will be talking about possibly both things at the next meeting. So there may be a lot of homework and a lot of consideration to do prior to the next meeting because of the multiple things going on in this area.
Can you repeat? We got a what?
We got a referral from the planning department for a pre-application workshop. So where we hear from planners and we hear from the applicant about something major.
Pre-application, okay.
Okay. So we'll be looking at El Granada quite a bit. We'll move on to the second item on the agenda, and I'll turn that over to Connie.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So this is about tourism on the Midcoast, and how this came about was as part of the age-friendly, and we were working on the need for medical support here on the coast. One of the things we were trying to understand in terms of the magnitude of the need on the coast, part of that was around how to quantify how many people are actually here on the coast besides us as residents. And so I couldn't identify that. And fortunately got to speaking with Crystalline about it, and she actually has that information about what's going on in the community. And so we got to speaking about tourism, its impact on the infrastructure, what we should be considering with this volume of people coming over, and other things that we could do to help potentially get revenue out of that. So I'm going to turn it over to Crystalline so she could share with us what's really happening over here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Crystalline, Coastside Chamber. So as some of you have probably heard in the past, there is a program called Visit Half Moon Bay. And most people assume that it's just Half Moon Bay proper, but it actually does cover the entirety of the coastside. The reason that we don't call it Visit the Coastside is because there's many coastsides, and that doesn't necessarily, like, we know it as the coastside lovingly, but the broader world doesn't. So although it is branded Visit Half Moon Bay, for the sake of the program, it's the entire coastside's tourism district. Visit Half Moon Bay, and this is the first time that I have been asked in my 7 years to come do this presentation. So I will, I'm gonna kind of go back to the beginning a little bit, because I'm going to assume that many people probably don't know these details. So apologize to those who do know the details, and I am boring you to death.
Should we bring your slides up?
If you would like to, sure.
You want to I can share if you want, Chris.
And the slides are not vital. They just reiterate, or they're just a visual representation of the data I'm going to share. And while you do that, though, what I can say without the slides is, so the Visit Half Moon Bay essentially boils down to a marketing fund that is, the revenues for that fund are generated by the hotels. So when somebody stays in a hotel, let's just say it's $200 for the room, and then there's some taxes that get put onto that. There's a county TOT, transient occupancy tax, that is 12%, that gets added to the bill. Depending on where they are, there's a Half Moon Bay City TOT of 15%. And then there is a county tourism district, which is very similar to our local version that I help manage. But it is for the county, and that goes to the county's Conventions and Visitors Bureau, which is called the SFP. And then there is a final tax that's put on there, which is the Visit Half Moon Bay, which we call a BID, Business Improvement District. And it was started in 2004, and it started at just $1. So it was just $1 per night. So if you stayed 3 nights, it was $3. And that would get paid through the hotels, but from the visitors. There's not, the hotels don't actually pay that fee, the visitors do. And it would come through the hotels and go directly into the marketing fund. Last year, the hotels agreed to increase the Visit Half Moon Bay marketing budget by double. So they went from $1 to $2. I am going to put out there though, that might sound like a lot, and it is not, because most tourism districts go off of percentages. So they might be 1 or 2%. And to put that in the most easily rounded numbers, getting $2 per night at the Ritz is a lot different than getting 2% of a night at the Ritz. That is the difference of $2 and 200. So, we are, the $2 started January of this year. So we are just now starting to see some additional marketing money come into that fund for advertising and the like. Any questions on how we started? Cool. Oh, can
Just before I lose the question.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is, I think this is a great program. I mean, sure, improvements like you just mentioned would be nice. But what I'm curious about is how, so the unincorporated coast, the county's portion, it would be the county's portion of that. What's the percentage for that? You didn't mention.
So, and I will just note, we do not manage the TOT. So the transient occupancy taxes just goes directly into Half Moon Bay City's fund, which is 15%. And then the county one is 12%.
12%. Okay.
Yeah.
And does the unincorporated coast get, so
Sorry, I might be a liar. It's 10%. I think it's 10%.
10%?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'm wondering then, how does so for programs like this, which I was aware of some of this, but not fully, how do we get that communication flowing? Like, I love what you're doing coming to talk about this today, but how do we keep that going so that one of the things I think we struggle with here is that Half Moon Bay has businesses here across Highway 1, and they want to enhance those businesses, but the impacts from that affects the community of El Granada. So it would be good to have more information flowing and more, I guess, input, more input, and feedback and that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah. I was invited. I came. Yeah, more than happy to do updates. As wanted, as needed.
Can I just piggyback off of that question? So in lieu of you not having to be here at every meeting or, specific points, is there a way to get that information to your site so that organizations like ourselves can kind of look at what specific areas are getting exactly what and how that information is?
Yeah, so we do generate a report that we put on our website. It's under destination marketing, under the business section of our website. I haven't updated it with these new numbers because we only just finished the annual report recently. But all of that information lives on our CoSide 411 website.
Yep.
Yeah. And you can also email me. I'll send it to you. Yes.
We're just going to ask questions.
I love open dialogue.
Okay. So the Half Moon Bay TOT tax goes to Half Moon Bay and they do something with it.
Yeah.
The part that the county gets generated, what happens to that? Does that go to the hotels over by the airport, or does it stay here?
That would be, honestly, that would be a question for the county office. In theory, the TOT generated by the hotels and inns in the unincorporated area that pay into the county TOT should be calculated and somehow returned to the coastside via infrastructure projects and things like that. To date, I have not received any numbers saying that the coastside inns generated $1 million worth of TOT in the course of a year.
So they don't break it out, is your guess?
I mean, they must on their end, but they don't supply the city or our BID with those numbers. Marisol might be able to help know which department at the county to contact.
Thanks, Crystalline. I wrote that down as a note for me to look into it tomorrow.
So thank you, Marisol. Okay, so headed to the slides. One thing we would like to note, as I feel the ire from the people in the audience, we, although we promote the coastside, our mission and our goal is to promote mid-week, what we call off-shoulder days and hours. We know the hotels are full on the weekends. So that is not our goal when we do advertising and things of the like. We aim for corporate groups and business travelers and people who are going on week-long vacations who are hopefully going to drive here once on a Monday and stay and then exit on a Thursday. That's our goal. So I just want to put that out there that we are not trying to work on the weekends. We get it. And so one of the problems that we have run into is still years after the pandemic now, corporate meetings have not rebounded. So leading up to the pandemic, for an example, one of our bigger hotels would tell us that 65% of their entire revenue generating room nights was from corporate groups. So they were using a meeting room or a ballroom to do some kind of offsite meeting retreat. And then, they have their 10 to 15 people stay in one of the hotels. And so we are still struggling to get those back. But there are things that we are working on. There are conventions that we are about to head out to. And we work with Visit California and our local San Mateo County Conventions and Visitors Bureau to try to find opportunities to engage meeting planners and corporations for those types of trips. So, yes.
Can I just quickly, so how successful do you think that is working? I mean, I understand, the concept of the Chamber of Commerce working with businesses and entities trying to bring conventions or workshops here to our hotels and to then, fill our hotels with guests and, of course, then as it would be support local businesses and, drive revenue generators. In your opinion, do you feel like as a destination spot, Oceana to the Ritz to, the small inn, do you feel like we are being seen and looked at as a destination spot?
Yes. So especially for smaller groups. So because we really only have 2 ballrooms on the coast side that can accommodate anything around 200 people, being Oceano and the Ritz. I think the Ritz can do up to 400. But because we don't have a lot of space, and one of those spaces is very high end, we actually have a hard time with some of the larger convention.
Honestly expensive.
Yeah, I did. And so where we have our niche at the moment, but still clawing our way back, is like the smaller, more intimate groups that's like a department from a corporation that wants to do an offsite at, let's say, Miramar Farms, and because they have this cute little barn and there's some digging into the dirt and things like that. And they have an on-site corporate facilitator who will walk them through their strategy and things like that. So we've got a couple of really cool, unique things that set us apart from the kind of more inland places. So corporations that want to truly kind of like unplug and have a different experience than just taking their team to LA or whatever. Like that's where we see our most of our success, but they are smaller teams. So those are going to be groups that are like maybe 10, 15, 20 people. But we do see a strong correlation of how many groups are coming based on what's happening in our tech sector. So unfortunately for us, because it makes it very difficult to plan, the tech sector really loves to hire a bunch of people and then fire a bunch of people. And so as soon as they hire a bunch of people, we start to see requests for proposals coming in, asking us, where can I have, I got a new team, where can we meet, and all of these things. And then we start getting ready to send out information, or we've sent out, maybe 3 to 5, and we're like getting excited. And then you hear in the news, oh, they're laying off 1,200 people. And we're like, that was the whole team. So, really ever since the pandemic, we've really just seen this pretty consistent, but unreliably timed, start to watch the bubble grow and kind of get excited, and then it contracts. So, I would say we're definitely not where we would want to be. And there's a lot of room for growth and a lot of things that we are working on to try to find the best strategies.
Well, I'm glad you connected the pre-pandemic, because that was really where my question was, like, if we had seen a rebound in terms of utilization.
No.
Yeah.
No. Yes.
So based on your document here, your presentation, it looks like occupied nights versus available is less than 60%. Is that heavily swung towards the weekend? Because
Yes.
So do you have, so if you look at occupancy on the weekend, it's at 100% or 90-some% versus?
So anecdotally, the hotels tell us that. Unfortunately, the company that is the actual one that the city has hired to do the collection of the BID fees, they do not ask that question. And so we don't actually have like the hard data that says that. But in talking to the hotels, that's consistently what they tell us.
What is it that they tell you? Is it 90%?
That they're like,
totally.
like on a busy weekend, like especially in the summer, yeah, they could be at like 90% occupancy, but then on Wednesday, they've got 2 people in the hotel.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I was just curious if you knew the weekend. And because it's, the demand for more hotels, it's like, do we really need more hotels or not? I can't quite tell.
So I will note that the average occupancy for the average tourism area lives around 68%.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Because they pretty much all have the same issue.
Yeah.
And so you max out on the weekend. So if you add more hotel rooms, then you give yourself more breathing room and you will fill them up on the weekend. One of the reasons that we were pro the Hyatt project was actually because of the meeting space.
Oh.
It was less about the individual rooms and more about the meeting space, because that was actually going to help us better attract more mid-range corporate groups that were larger than what we can accommodate now in that mid-range. And through the pandemic, we lost, I think at this point, since the pandemic, we have lost roughly 60 some rooms from what we had pre-pandemic. So the one hotel being turned into the transitional housing, so that was 52 rooms. And then we had a littler Airbnb drop. So that was 8 rooms there, and so on and so forth. San Benito House had their fire, they're still not reopened. Zabala House changed some of their rooms into apartments. So we've actually lost a bit of inventory. So one whole hotel room coming in actually only gets us back to 2019. Yes.
Do RV spots count as this stuff?
Not for this. So RV and Airbnb.
Yeah.
They get charged and assessed the TOT, so the transient occupancy tax, but they are not assessed the marketing fee.
But you can tell from the transient tax then
Yeah,
how many.
yes. But yeah, for the sake of our doing business, we don't get to rely on them.
Okay.
They do get to benefit though. So currently on the entirety of the coast side, there is 709 available rooms. However, in the unincorporated area, you all are at 153. So the bulk of those rooms are in the Ritz and then in downtown Half Moon Bay. But you have 153 rooms between Seal Cove Inn, Oceano Hotel, Ocean View Inn, Inn at Mavericks, Harbor View Inn, and Cypress Inn on Miramar Beach.
And what capacity is that? Less than 50%, like?
Of the total rooms?
Yeah.
Well, the total rooms are 709.
If that's for the unincorporated coastside at 709 and we are currently.
No. Sorry. The whole of the coast side, all hotel rooms is 709. And then 153 of those 709 are in unincorporated or in MCC's jurisdiction.
I was wondering if there was a breakout from the total available for the unincorporated coastside and then looking at what is utilized.
Yes, the unincorporated came in at 67% occupancy. Whereas Half Moon Bay city limits came in at 54%. So inside city limits is 54, unincorporated is at 67, which made the average 57 for this past year.
Thank you.
Part of the reason that the unincorporated does do better is the room rates are a little bit on the reasonable side. And that TOT, so the county having the 10% TOT over Half Moon Bay's 15% TOT. Even if you have a $200 a night room, if you're comparing, Oceano to Beach House, you're going to see that difference in the total, especially now that that law is in place that says they have to show people the fees before they book. So they can do more shop comparisons and they see the difference between that 10% and that 15%. Cool. Yes. So you could see, so you could kind of surmise about how much TOT, I have not done the math, so I'm not surmising myself, but if you take the HMB TOT and know that they are roughly 500 plus rooms more than the unincorporated, and that's at 15%, whereas unincorporated is at 10%. I'm sure somebody very, very smart could do that wiggle room algebra and figure out kind of maybe what the county TOT looks like. Just putting that out there, smarty pants.
I was thinking about that.
Somebody out there's got an Excel. And then the other thing that we do note, in regards to just the overall economic impact of what these dollars mean to the entirety of the coastline, is there's 3 types of economic impact. So one is called direct. So that is the economic impact of somebody coming to stay at the hotel, giving the hotel that money, and the hotel made money. That's direct. That's the economic impact for that hotel. Indirect is gave the money, hotel has the money, hotel has paid people. So they've paid their staff, they've paid, their groundskeepers, their people. And so now those people have money in their pocket. That's the indirect economic impact. And then we've got the third, which is the induced economic impact, which is The dollars came from the visitor, went to the hotel paid their staff went to Safeway,
Right.
shopped locally. And so if you caboodle all of those together, with magic math, that is not at all super scientific. We roughly guesstimate that tourism brings in $7.9 billion of direct, indirect, and induced. So that's assuming that every dollar that a tourist has spent here has circulated the community at least 6 times, and you know, and has paid people's mortgage and things like that.
I know on your website, you included a count of visitors. Do you have that now updated as well? It's not, I see it's not on here, but do you?
Anecdotally, we tend to believe that it's around 3 to 4 million in a year. The mass majority of those are day trippers. So again, I just want to put out there that we do not market to day trippers to the best of our ability. That is, like, we want them to come here and spend sales tax, but please don't yell at me that they are coming and trashing the beach. So that's our guess. However, super cool. This past year, we embarked on the COSIDE's first ever in-depth visitor survey. So everything we have done has just been based off of like anecdotal evidence, doing our best to find best practices for making, you know, equations for how this correlates to this. But we have gotten access to geolocation data. So when your cell phone asks you if you want to be tracked, if you say yes, we are tracking you. And we also have just about to get access to Visa spending data. So please don't get scared. Doesn't tell us anything personal. It will just tell us in the year 2024, you had, let's just say 700,000 people come to the COSIDE, these very particular zip codes, and spent $1 million on rooms. And then, you know, 500,000 spent $1 million on food. So it's like these very big, broad categories, and it'll just tell us how many people have used Visa credit cards to pay for that. We're also working to get the MasterCard so that we can try to paint a full picture. And once we have that information, it will be made public. So you will all get access to that to do with what you will. And then the other part of the survey that we are working on right now is boots on the beach. So we have, we're about to have people, human beings, out on the beach, very nicely and politely, asking people who look like they are visiting, just 5 core questions. What brought you here? How long do you plan on staying? How many people are in your group? And we'll be doing that for a bunch of weekends to start to really try to get a sense of like how many people are actually on the beach and what are their plans? What are they doing on the beach? Do they plan on staying the night? Have they ever thought about staying the night? Those types of things. And while they're here, did they bring their lunch with them, or are they going to go to a restaurant? Because that also helps with the sales tax. So that's the information that we're gathering. And so hopefully, fingers crossed, all goes well. By the end of this year, we'll publish a full visitor survey report that everybody can use to help in your decision making. Any questions on that? Yeah.
I actually have questions that go probably all the way back to the beginning of your presentation, because this is so far out of my wheelhouse that some of what you say seems to like kind of make sense and wash over me. And then a few minutes later, I realize I have no idea what that meant. One of the things that I thought I heard you talking about was that there's money that's generated through the TOT and these other taxes and occupancy charges and things like that. And it goes into some big hopper with the county, but nobody knows how any of that is coming back here and being spent on actual infrastructure or other benefits for this community where the money was generated in the first place. Is that correct?
Seems like you understood it to me. That's exactly it.
You got.
Okay. I'm just gonna say for the record, it's super weird.
Well,
Okay, another thing you said, what I thought I heard you said was that you were sensing ire amongst people in the room or
No.
in the audience or something like that.
So usually, yes, usually when we talk about visitor stuff, residents get very upset
Yeah,
that
like,
we're doing anything to invite visitors.
right, like promotion and tourism is like somehow not in
Well-
alignment with what some people who live here feel like, and I get that. But I also sense sort of in the room that the idea of promoting revenue generation within the community, whether it's direct, indirect, or induced, is a good thing.
Yes.
Is that generally the case? Is that?
Yeah, so that's the goal of tourism.
Yeah.
Is the economic development piece of it, and to have people come to the community and, put in via TOT, put in via sales tax, put in via the actual items and things that they buy at the restaurants and the stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of struggling with that because there were some comments made not related to your presentation here, but to one of our other agenda items tonight that was like, why does the harbor district need to generate revenue? So it's like, is revenue generation a good thing or is it not a good thing? That's kind of, I'm not asking you, but I'm just saying that out loud, so.
But if you don't mind, I'll give
Please.
you my hot take on it. At this juncture, revenue generation is imperative and is vital. So currently the coastside together, unincorporated and city, is roughly, just a hair short of 25,000 individuals. And as we see when we're out there, many of the roads are terrible. Many places are missing sidewalks. We've got, all of these infrastructure needs that need doing. And the tourism dollars, in theory, from the TOT, should be going. It's why TOT, to my knowledge, it's why TOT was invented, was to offset the footprint, or to give cities and counties the ability to offset the footprint of the tourist. And then the second part of that being for our businesses, because it takes so much money to run a business these days, between the rent and the bills and the insurance, and everybody can, feel the pain of the fire insurance these days. Well, businesses have those same things.
Cost of employees.
Yeah, cost of employees, and not, at least for our businesses here, the mass majority of the restaurants and all that, they can't survive on locals only.
Yeah.
Locals at best, in the best of times, in the best of circumstances, will equal roughly 20% of their revenue. They need 80% to come from the rest of the world. And so we need them to keep those businesses afloat, even just for us to be able to have and patron those businesses. So
But-
revenue generation is very, very.
The other side of that ought to be that revenue generation ought to pay for the quality of life of
Yeah.
the community.
Yes.
Can I say something real quick?
Well, Kevin had his
Okay.
up first.
Well, I think we're all actually saying the same things, and I hope when I mentioned the harbor district and revenue generation, I didn't sound like because that's not how it was meant. But I think you bring up a very valid question now, which is, how do we get from you telling us this information? I know, Marisol, you're probably jotting down notes as we speak, but I think that there is now on the table an official question that started with Claire at the very beginning of this. The money that comes in within the unincorporated coaside going into this magical, accounts. How do we confirm and in which ways is that money then being redirected back into the unincorporated coaside, which has issues with sidewalks, streets, lighting, a ton of things that are never addressed. I mean, what you just said just opens up a very big, broader question.
There's no public accounting.
Well, in that,
Doesn't
so,
exist.
yes,
In-
it's what I
When I
wanted
mean
to.
public, they don't tell you.
Well,
They're not gonna say you got this money from this zip code and you got this money back to this zip code. If you can't find it, it might be hidden somewhere. They won't tell us.
Well, and so
Period.
that's why I just wanted
Yeah.
to acknowledge that even not necessarily so specific to the TOT, that I do want to give a shout out to the MCC, who, to my recollection, for the last roughly year and a half, maybe even 2 years, has been trying to have that dialogue with the county to find out, like, I think in regards to also the property taxes and the sales tax and things like that. So I think the TOT was a part of that broader conversation. So those questions have been asked. It's just, I don't know where that is in.
Show me that ledger.
Yeah.
I'd like to see
Yeah.
that. Broken out by street.
So
Well,
broken out by street.
yeah.
He's worried about his property taxes.
Yeah.
The idea of we're always going to have visitors share, whether we
Yeah,
want
the
it or
coastal
not.
commission will never not allow.
Yeah, and so we're gonna have this influx, this 3 to 4 million. And the reason why I was so intrigued by it when Kristlyn told me that was about the demand that places on our infrastructure. And I looked at it from the lens initially from healthcare, but it applies to everything, the roads,
Right.
everything. And so I thought it was important information for us to potentially use and to leverage as we, look for other opportunities. And so.
And it does get brought up a lot in regards to like emergency evacuations, right?
Yeah.
So if like something happens on a Saturday, you
What do
guys
we do?
have to contend with the fact that there's potentially 50,000 extra people, double the normal population can be here on any given Saturday.
It's a huge amount of people.
That's a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to add another piece to this, because I used to have an office in Half Moon Bay, and probably half the people that I saw were local and half the people came from other places in the Bay Area. And it struck me that most of the people that came from other places in the Bay Area came and saw me, but they also went and bought donuts at the donut store, and they brought their mother with them so they could go look at the beach. And it was like, everything that happens here generates more tourism, which generates more business. So it's not just tourist identified people, it's anything that happens on the coast generates more people coming and more people spending money here.
Yeah, and just for the sake of what we quantify as a tourist, when somebody from Pacifica comes here, they're a tourist.
Yeah.
So it's like, as soon as somebody crosses the tunnel or, the crest of Highway 92, if they're not living on the coast side, then they're considered a tourist. Yeah.
And they might not have come for tourism originally, but they ended up being a tourist.
Yeah. They're just a tourist by the nature of their address.
I think we've just opened ourselves up to hopefully an additional conversation with county and maybe even yourself, but I think it's important when we have streets that can't get serviced by Caltrans, when we have issues with mobility and telecommunications, things that need resources thrown at them just to bring our community up to a level of normalcy. This is just to bring our unincorporated coastline up to maybe even 3/4 of what Ocean Colony gets to call normal, like streets, accessible streets, phone coverage, it just so many things. So I hope, Marisol, that you're taking this with the right intention, but I would love for us to have an additional conversation about this.
Yeah, that's why we started it.
Yeah.
Kimberly has.
Sorry.
Greg's got his hand up if you want.
I wanted to point out
Sorry.
that Greg's had his hand up.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, I
Sorry.
can't see
And
the
then you
Zoom.
can circle back to me.
Shush, shush.
Greg, sorry, go ahead, Greg.
Thanks for recognizing me.
I'm sorry.
I wanted you to know that I participated in a Half Moon Bay community conversation led by Kim Hines and a couple weeks ago, and I have regular conversations with other community leaders throughout the region, including Half Moon Bay. And that leads me to sense a quiet desperation about the fiscal sustainability of this region. I think some of you know from 2 years ago, I tried to quantify the imbalance in fund flows between our region and the county. It's never been resolved. I also found some years ago that local agencies here were tens of millions of dollars in the hole for their capital replenishment, and then Trump happened. So until we fix accounting, you can't tell the deficits in capital replenishment because they're not visible on the balance sheet. Replacement cost isn't shown. And some of you know I testified in front of the Government Accounting Standards Boards in February and made recommendations to fix that. But until it is fixed, you have to do a little analysis. It is interesting to hear now the financial impact of that homeless hotel that Kristen mentioned. And I just wanted to underscore that without fiscal sustainability, no government can address its priorities, even social justice. So I commend and support Crystalline's efforts as our economic development officer. But any revenue, as Mr. Rogers pointed out, should go to our local agencies, not to the county where we don't get it back. And I would note that Half Moon Bay only gets about 1/3 of the property tax revenue back from the county compared to normal cities. So there's another issue. So you, the MCC, have hosted an important topical dialogue here, and I hope you will please do what you can to help Crystalline and Half Moon Bay out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
And if you want to, you can go ahead and close the slideshow.
Oh,
'Cause some of it's not really pertinent to this conversation in the direction we've gone, which is super cool and important. Yes, thank you, Greg. And I also, actually, and sorry, did not forget about you. Want to point out just in thinking of also when you do start potentially, and I'm more than happy to help in any way with those conversations, liaise, be a part, however you see fit. I would just note that, what we do know is City of Half Moon Bay has had a 2024 TOT of just over or almost 8.5 million, which apparently makes no real dent in all of the projects. And my guess is going to be that the county for this area, because of how little rooms you have in comparison to Half Moon Bay, is going to be somewhere around $1 million. So when you do have that conversation, or we have that conversation with the county, I just want to lay it out that at this day and age, $1 million doesn't do much.
But year after year, it adds up.
Yes, and whether it's getting a sidewalk fixed in one neighborhood and then the next and the next, yes, 100%.
And who sets the rates?
The county for the TOT.
Who in the county?
The supervisors.
Board of Supervisors?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's been a minimum of 10 years since the TOT for the county has changed. It might have been even longer than that. Most cities who have control of their own TOT updates it essentially with cost of living. 15% is really high. 15% is like where we have started to see a negative impact from the TOT rate because it impacts the overall cost of the room. But if you could, the county could very easily go to 12, which was the normal pre-pandemic, and generate some more revenue without causing any harm.
That was the rate pre-pandemic?
No, their rate hasn't changed, but most cities pre-pandemic were at about 13%. And then through the pandemic, they raised it because their coffers were getting depleted. So I think it was East Palo Alto was the first one to go to 15%, and then Half Moon Bay was the second. And now I think there's more cities that have gone to 15%. But it has had a negative impact. So if you can, I think 12 is like that sweet spot or brings in more money, but people aren't scared off.
Yeah. Thanks.
Did you still have your question?
So I do have, I had two questions, but I can't remember one. But you have 7 minutes left. Do you want to finish your presentation and then come back and I'll ask the question?
I mean, I think that was pretty much it versus the questions that I was kind of asked to, um. Yeah. No, I'm good with the questions that I was asked to answer.
Okay. Well, the only one I remember now is, I was curious about the businesses that are in El Granada that are not within Half Moon Bay. How do those figure into this? So there's the Indian restaurant, there's press, I mean, the ones that are along here. How does that work? Do they factor into this at all?
Oh gosh, yes. So first and foremost, they're the ones that support the hotels and the inns that are in your area, right? So like Harborview Inn or,
Yep.
People very much are gonna end up at the press, even if they're staying at Oceano and things like that.
Uh-huh.
And then also from our marketing efforts, so we always talk cosign. So when we have influencers come, or what we call fam trips, so they're familiarization trips. So like a group of media or meeting planners, we invite them to come hang out with us for a day, and we show them around and tell them all the cool things. So we bring them to the harbor and we bring them to downtown and we might do a fun activity with them. And so whenever we do that, we always make sure that we hit all the major, points. We're very keen on, letting people know about Fitzgerald Marine Reserve. I will note, we always talk about the reserve and what you can and can't do with the reserve. And we very much aim for sustainability and eco-conscious tourism when we talk about it with these groups, which they love. And yeah, so we always try to hit up. And then when we do have the opportunity to host a group, we try to circle through all of the restaurants. So if we have them for 2 days, we will do a whole Midcoast jaunt. And then we'll have a downtown Half Moon Bay jaunt. So we do our best to not hit the same hotel or restaurant or activity in the same spot. Like we don't have go-tos. We really try to be really conscious of spreading it out. And then also they have different wants and needs. So somebody might want to go horseback riding and then the next one wants a mixology class. So yeah.
Okay, because at several moments at Half Moon Bay City Council meetings, I've heard references to, oh, we need to encourage SAMs, we need to enhance SAMs, we need to protect SAMs. And there are other businesses here, and so I just wonder, how do we get equal enhancement and just equal notice of the other businesses that, are contributing to our economy and.
Yeah, so that's where it gets a little bit dicey between the different councils, because Half Moon Bay City Council only gets money from SAMs.
Right.
So that's why they're, because of the cherry stem, SAMs and the beach house are gonna be what's in their purview.
So how do we improve that sort of way of looking at it so that it's a little more holistic and beneficial to everybody?
I would,
what would you
Yeah.
recommend?
Yeah. So I'm gonna say this, but it's gonna sound like I'm trying to be very self-serving and I'm not. It's the path of least resistance. Work with the chamber. So because we are the ones that are the managers of Visit Half Moon Bay, and we are the ones, the only entity on the coast side that's dubbed with trying to work on economic development coast side wide. We're the only one that, to my knowledge, works with all of the agencies, is pretty in the loop with most of the agencies on the projects. And so we can, we do our best to try to keep people in the loop if we don't think they've been kept in the loop, but yeah, but the best is if because your council priorities and city council's priorities are just always gonna slightly,
of course, yeah,
rub, no matter how friendly you guys are and, are cool to hang out, but you just have different priorities. So that's, the chamber is the one that is trying to be as much of a bridge as we can. So we take into account the businesses, but yeah, at a city council meeting, unless Scott's there doing a presentation, and they're not necessarily gonna have that in the back of their head when they're talking about their deficit.
Go after whatever you want.
Well, so I appreciate the role of the chamber, and it's always a joy to have you come talk about this stuff. It's really, you make it fun. And it's very informative. And I would welcome more conversation just about how to be more collaborative in terms of raising up all boats instead of just one or two, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Love it. We recently have been starting to make additional groups. So with the Visit Half Moon Bay meetings typically have been the hotels, because it's their money to spend marketing wise. But the chamber, through the Visit Half Moon Bay program, was able to bring on a full-time employee recently. So part of what Ranger is working on, and next time we do something like this, I will bring Ranger. He just happens to be teaching a class tonight. We're in the process of trying to create more kind of like roundtable groups. So that different segments that should be at the table together to just give updates on what they're working on, but hopefully that leads to collaboration. So we did start one with the merchants. So we have this month we did our first successful restaurant and kind of merchant co-side group. So based off of this conversation, I think it's probably pretty prudent for us to try to work on a organizational government kind of maybe entity one that we can try to put together and see if there's a time that works for everybody. But we will continue to try to throw spaghetti at the wall to figure out what works.
Thanks.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming, Crystal, and
Yeah,
really
yeah.
helpful. We'll have-
More questions, email me.
Great, thanks so
Thank you
much.
so
Appreciate
much.
you coming.
Wasn't racially motivated, so.
So you're just gonna let these guys get away with shooting?
Hey.
Yeah.
We move the 5-minute timer to the back so we can see people who.
Yeah.
You can see everybody.
It's done on that.
Oh, it's around, that's all.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Crystal, and thank you, Connie, for putting that together. Are we good to move on to the next item?
Did we ask the public if they have questions?
Great. Yeah, people just raise their hands.
Okay.
It was pretty free for all. So the next item is about outreach from the council to the community and from the community to the council, as I understand it. And I'll turn that over to Kevin.
Okay. Scott, you, our slide deck up?
It's there. Oh, wait, there it is.
You open it up to where you just click.
There you go.
All right.
So let me.
So the first thing that we wanted to do was to thank Claire and Kimberly for giving us time to talk about this today. We know that a lot of the ideas that we're going to talk about have probably been talked about in some capacity in the past, and some ideas may be new, some may be old, but we are just grateful to have an opportunity to try to move this aspect of what the MCC does into a more kind of contemporary place. So what are the goals of the task force? We want to really just expand the thinking around how we engage our community. I've heard said oftentimes at this meeting that there's always been a way that we have done things. Some of those things are great. We just think that there are ways that we can expand. We want the community to know that we are not just coming here twice a month and talking about things and not trying to derive actions from those discussions. And we think that a lot of our community members, at least some that we've heard from, feels that way, feels that they bring topics or issues to the MCC, they're discussed in this format, and where do they go from there? Therein creates an opportunity for this task force to create some lesson learns and action item updates on the topics that are brought to this meeting. The next item would be how do we get all of the stakeholders at the table? So from elected officials to different organizations that have an impact or some decision-making impact on the issues that are brought forward to the table. The easiest one to pick is the Harbor District and the parking lot, right? So Caltrans is involved, but who else is involved in that process? And how beneficial would it be for the MCC to leverage its place in the community to create these cross-organizational meetings where everybody is in one room at the same time, and that questions are not asked in a vacuum, and we are in a place where we cannot respond back to the community and get that input out there. We want the community to know that we're here to help them elevate their concerns, to help our community understand what it means to take an individual grievance and turn that into a community concern through the quantification and the input of other community members as they are bringing those issues forward. How do you engage your neighbors? You may all live on one block and have an issue, but does that issue affect neighbors across the street or 3 blocks over? How can we quantify that so when public comment is made, the MCC has the ability to leverage multiple community members that have the same concerns in some of the outcomes that we have created in the past, such as letters of support, communications with department heads, elected officials, et cetera. The last part of this is just good advocacy is really more than just listening, but also making sure that we are reaching the members within our community that that need to hear what the community has to say. So you want to take the next slide?
Oh, sure, go ahead. So we started out with just trying to understand what's the objective of outreach, right? And it's to have an intentional effort to connect and engage with, our community and the population, so that as we know, we raise awareness and educational information like tonight that we give out and try to help support for the community. And then, as Kevin was saying, to foster collaboration among the different agencies as well. How do we help do that as part of our outreach? And so it's important to us, obviously, to increase our community engagement. It's one of the things we started out with. And not only have we seen it here somewhat, but even when, in some of the other organizational meetings I've been at, like the KEEP, they've heard multiple agencies saying, how do we engage the community more? How do we get them to participate more and collaborate with us more? It just seems to be an issue that lots of organizations have, including us, to be able to get more community engagement. In the hopes that we can improve the outcomes of what we're trying to do and promote inclusivity and strengthen the trust in us among our community. So we want to make sure we're allocating resources in the appropriate way for the concerns of the community, and that we're getting enough information to be able to do that. So that's why it's important.
These are kind of together.
Oh, I thought we were going to take this out, the slide out. I think we have an old.
I think,
yeah.
You want to go back to it?
No.
Okay.
So, because that was just informational. So we talked about how do we combine outreach and dissemination of the information to help lasting community change. We talked about collecting data from the largest audience possible. We're starting to hear more and more about people doing surveys in the community, and maybe that's a way to do that.
And we do go into specifics later in the presentation about the actual ways that this can be done.
We want to encourage questions and provide thoughtful response to, like tonight. I thought it was really helpful that we're starting to do listening sessions, right? To get encourage questions from the community and participation. Social media accounts, we do some of that, but there's some that you can do as an individual, not as an MCC member, but also as an individual member of the community, but also as the MCC media account. So
Can I just make one quick point on this? So recently I posted something on my own social media account about tonight's meeting. And thankfully Claire saw that and was able to, you know, bring my attention to the fact that while we are all MCC council members, when we're making a post about an MCC business item on our own personal accounts, it's really important to, you know, speak in the first person singular and make sure that when we're soliciting information from the broader community on an MCC business item, that they know that they're talking to one member of the MCC and that I or whoever is making that post is in no way meaning to speak for all of the MCC.
Yeah, that's great. We also talked about getting live polls and surveys together for audience participation to make sure we get more engagement from the community and that they feel involved in part of the process for us collecting that information, identifying and collaborating with the stakeholders as we do to see how we can influence change for what we know that the community needs. And then to try to get decision makers within one room, as we talked about several times now, successfully, affecting change across all the constituencies, all the stakeholders involved. And then including processes, number of community members to support the process to incorporate final actions. So letters of support we do, direct communication with decision makers, information sharing with elected officials and department heads. So who have say in the outcomes rather. So lots of ways that we think that we can help create more impactful change.
And when I think about this bullet point in particular, I think about what Supervisor Mueller said to us at the meeting that I was sworn in at, and that was the more that we bring up issues that are complex and include the necessity for a full Board of Supervisors vote, the more impactful a letter of support would be if, say, Claire or Kimberly were able to send this letter off and say, in addition to the signatures of the council, here's 150 community members that saw this issue on our MCC site and support our stance on this, to add a kind of quantifiable measure to it. Ray has said that the benefit of that is not to be lost on us, and that to bring that forward puts him in a position to better argue for allocation of resources.
Well, we did that with the letter of support last meeting that we did for the support for the urgent care was seeking. We included the community survey that was taken in advance of that to show the support of the community for that, to send that along. So there was hundreds of signatures on that. So probably go to the next slide. Who's taking that out too, I think.
You want to take that out?
Well,
So those are just like examples.
Yeah, just examples, but I think we have an old slide deck in here, that's all.
I don't know how it got mixed up because I think we took this out.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Keep going.
You want that out too?
Yeah.
Well, he had it summarized, yeah.
Okay,
So, yeah, there we go.
so like as we've already talked about in this, we want to increase we want more people to know we exist. So there's ways to do that in person with tabling and events. Like we found out that we can set up a table in front of the post office anytime we want. We don't have to go through any paperwork or that. And we also will have a spot at the farmer's market in September. That's the nearest time that is available for us to be in person to get more community outreach. We want to encourage more community members to conduct direct outreach, and as Kevin talked about, we want to get a greater internet and online presence with all the different social media avenues that are available. And at meetings and events, we want to include processes for public comment, make sure we get out requests for agendas, help identify grievances from community concerns, and just empower community members to tell us how they feel about different issues.
I think one way to look at this, so tonight we had Dan here and some other, Melinda McNaughton spoke about this, Susie spoke about this. So they're close to 800 signatures. They took an issue that was important to them. They took the initiative to do the outreach, create a petition online so that it was absolutely quantifiable. And that's one way. Another group, Coastside Allies, which I happen to be a part of, was really concerned about some of the unfinished fire safety issues, the fire break, things like that. We managed to collect over 1,200 signatures, both in person and online, and have actually seen the success of that put into place. So we worked with department heads and county, and now they have committed a budget. They've allocated actual budget to finishing the fire break where the open space trust hits El Granada Boulevard, and to also look at Quarry Park. Also, in addition to that, the request as part of that was to look at the logs and the debris that were left and to check them for volatility to see if they were a fire risk. So that is a direct application of community members mobilizing around something and doing the outreach themselves, talking to their neighbors and getting a petition started.
So we also discussed having our website be more interactive with the community, and being able to take polls through the MCC website.
Right. And so currently the MCC website, we post the agenda, but we don't have a specific tab that would allow, and this is what we're proposing as an idea to be discussed if we move forward with this, is that we put our current business agenda, which would be everything, say, that we've taken from our retreat. So every business item that people volunteered to work on, and that live on the MCC website, but also to create a hyperlink to something that's known as a tick. So a tick is just a measure of data collection that is very basic, and it can say fire safety is on there, or the hospital, healthcare on the coast side. Somebody can click on that and it can give a summation of what the issue is and what MCC would like to work on and see done with this. And then a question would be, are you in support? And then you would click a link, click here to show your support. You would say yes or no. It would be your name, it would be your zip code, and it would be your email address. That would give us a tick, a data tick of information, which could also then be used to quantify letters of support or requests that the MCC makes about the business agenda that we have on the table.
We also talked about partnering with other sites. So one of the how some of this started also with my conversation with Crystalline is because through her mechanisms on the chamber site, she has a continuous cycle of pushing data out different days for different information and has a pretty broad reach. What was would you mind sharing the statistic again? How many through your websites, through your social media sites, how many
the reaches, I think
the reaches that you had? I forget what your number was.
Yeah, so for us.
We can't get you on the.
For a single post, because we posted to so many different channels via our website and social media, a single post can average about 3,000 views and interactions.
So she kindly said that she would be willing to take the site and for us to be able to leverage that for more specifically to, for local agencies, events, not events like, entertaining events, but to put on the community calendar, right, that we can potentially push out.
Want me to just note what it was? Okay, so the chamber runs a site dedicated to locals. It was called coastside365.com, coastside every day. However, because of wonderful conversations like we've had, we are in the process of renaming it Coastside 411. So I just want to note that it's really meant to be a locals referral or locals resource website. Not just the chamber site, because that sounds very drab and boring. And so we have a calendar on there, and when we chatted, it was noted that the way that the calendar was kind of lumped together, it didn't really leave a really obvious spot for agency meetings. So we've gone ahead and separated out some of the categories, and we will continue to refine. So as you're working on things, and you feel like, oh, maybe this falls in this category and that category doesn't exist, we'll add it. And then anything that gets added to our website calendar automatically gets pushed out on our social media feeds, which we have 2. We have the Chamber's social media, Instagram and Facebook, because those are the most longstanding and currently have the larger audience. However, we've also created channels for COSIDE 411, so we will be building that audience. And then my personal Nextdoor is actually gets a lot of good traction on views, and so we also push it out that way as well. And then we have our weekly email. So depending on if it's a meeting, it'll go in the Monday email. If it's a survey, it'll go in the Tuesday email. And then we have at least 500 people on each of our lists with a 70%. Last I looked, I think it was a 70% open rate, which is really good for an email marketing thing. But we continue to work on building that. But on average, an average post gets about 3,000 views in between the channels.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So just, if I could just punctuate what Chris Lynn said with a couple of things. So each one of us, when we make a post about an issue that is relevant to the community as it kind of funnels through MCC. So I made a post about the MCC last week. And so far it's reached over 8,000 reaches. And I have a fairly large reach when I make posts, but this is just to kind of reinforce or encourage, of course, with the oversight of our chair and vice chair, kind of what we're allowed to say, what content is allowed to look like on an individual MCC member basis. It might be duplicated in some of these efforts, but for us to individually start posting things and to engage our community, I must have gotten 4 dozen emails, personal emails, thanking me for posting information that they were unaware of. Also, I want to make sure we mention Michelle Dragany. I think she is here in the audience, and she has offered her resources and has for a very long time without any request of anybody on the MCC, posted our meetings, posted our content, and she gets quite a bit of coverage as well. But we think marrying all of those together will drive more community involvement and participation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. Yeah,
Thank you.
we know different people look at different things. I think you had a question.
So Chrislyn, maintaining all these processes for the chamber, is someone paid to do that? So maintaining all these processes for social media and the website, is someone paid to do those? You are.
You're looking.
So you're it.
Yes. I should
Okay.
note though, before my chamber life, I had my own website development and marketing company. So,
Okay.
so that part just happens to be right in my wheelhouse.
Okay. Well, I think that's an important thing to think about. All these things mentioned are great. I think we need to keep in mind that how we implement them needs some thought, because not only there has to be capacity to do it, there has to be expertise to do it, and it has to be sustainable over time as people rotate on and off.
That's right.
And that's going to vary because you use the word expertise, and it takes very little skill to create a post that conforms with what is being presented by the chair or the council. Brown law acts those considerations to put on your own personal website. But of course, there's some room or some necessity to be able to kind of expand where we are and to go to where we want to be.
But these are our ideas. We're not
Yeah,
saying.
no, I think they're great ideas.
But we want to discuss them all. I
That
mean, I
wasn't
don't.
intended to be negative. It was
No,
just-
no.
When you think about it,
We said the same thing. How do we create processes,
yeah.
you know, that are sustainable?
we can just do one.
We've got one thing looking at us in the face right now, and that's the newsletter. That's something that was started and there's a commitment to it and people have changed on the council. And I don't know where it stands right now, but I guess it's not ready to go out.
Jess and I did talk about it, and we were talking
That
about trying
too.
to get it done
Well, that
before
is another
school,
vehicle.
but can we go to the next slide so we can continue with the presentation?
Okay.
No, sure.
Kimberly, do you wanna, or sorry, Connie, do you wanna take next steps?
I'm sorry, I'm not,
This is an easy one.
sorry, I was on something else. I have to go. Oh, yeah, so we just thought, obviously, we wanted the engagement to talk about it tonight, right? How do we potentially upgrade, not really upgrade, but leverage the website that we have today to, you know, put some current additional tabs in there for current issues or for collecting information or whatever, to just try to modernize the site a little bit, so to speak.
We have the ability to do that.
Yeah,
We do.
yeah, we just making
wanna
the
do
time, yeah. Creating some flyers with some current issues that we would maybe use in tabling. Scott had one that he had shown us when we were starting out, that he had created, that talks a little bit more about what we're trying to, messaging we're trying to get out, our mission and contact information and how to get to us. Some tabling, reserving the tabling spaces. Scott mentioned no problem at the post office, but the events we have to register for. So, you know, even the Friday night stuff that is done, you know, for locally through the summer, or the, you know, when they did the Pride Parade, lots of people had, you know, tables out there, things like that, that we could start to leverage more of.
And the Shops at the Village had also said that we could possibly table there during the weekends where it's like a lot of traffic. I forget the lady who I spoke with, but I'll follow up with that.
Yeah. I mean, that takes us to do that though. So that's why we want to talk about it, because it means we have to agree to, some people get out there and sit out there for an hour or two or so to have these tabling events.
I'm doing that one. It's next to Hot Dog. I can make that happen.
Research applications for actually attaching petitions or signatures. You know, I've looked at some software. I mean, it's important that we get something that's really legitimate software, I think, to probably do that with, that can, you know, hopefully validate and has some kind of trust in it, that, you know, it's checking that, you know, it's not somebody hitting the button 1,000 times in the petition, that, you know, it really can validate you know, that either through they have them with voter registration, they have them with IP addresses, that it can actually check that somebody is not fabricating petitions, right, or signatures. A budget maybe to present, to agendize at a future meeting for some of these things, if we want to do the modernization of the website, or create start leveraging some software for, you know, the surveys or petitions. And then coordinate with some local organizations to promote cross discussion and grow the community and the buy-in. And then the digital newsletter with, you know, some hyperlinks. So these were things that we considered as things we'd like to talk about as potential next steps, if the rest of the members feel that it's useful and beneficial to go some of these routes.
Here we are at the end.
This was, yeah, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.
Anyone? So if you wanted to go to get the slide deck, you can get mine, my information, Connie's or Scott's email. We can email the slide deck out. I'll make sure the right one goes out. So that's not too complicated.
It's okay. There's just additional information. We try to just shorten it so we can talk more about it. And
is the one posted the same as this one?
Yes.
Or what is, okay. Sorry,
It's-
that was
it's
the
not-
one I
yeah.
got, so.
Okay, it's fine. It's just, we were trying to simplify it a little bit. Any thoughts?
Questions and answers.
What is the status of the posting at the post office? Seems like that's not happening right now.
No, well, we wanted to come to this group, and I think we're ready to do it. I mean,
No, no, no.
Want to do a table?
The agenda?
No, the agenda.
It seems like there's been a inconsistency with the
Yeah.
agenda actually getting posted.
Yeah.
At which post office?
Oh,
This one.
I have brought the El Granada post office the agenda every single week. I've dropped it off on Saturday and been told it would be put up by Monday. Went back on Monday and it was not there. Asked, the postmaster needs to approve it. On the days that the agenda comes out very late, I've had a communication with Kimberly and Claire via email that I would take it to the post office first thing on Monday morning. And also seen in those instances where it's not posted. So I don't know.
Seem inconsistent.
I don't know who else to ask. I've asked, I think I saw Ron's name taken off as postmaster, so I don't know if there's a new person there.
I don't think he's there.
But I have asked specifically, can I wait? Can I post it for you? There's room there. No, we have to do it later. So there is an issue there. I just don't know how to best approach it.
So in line with what you guys are presenting here, I think there should be a message board, you know, that's weatherproof and everything, that's outside of the post office. Either it's attached to the outside of the post office, or it's
like a corkboard with like one of those glass.
Yeah, like what they have attached to the down at the door here, but something that's can accommodate as much community messaging as is necessary, not just our message and GCSD and the Harbor District, but whatever needs to be messaged.
That's
You know,
not
there should be a
great,
community board there, and that's the obvious place since everybody.
It sounds like a great idea and something that the MCC would be a great resource for.
I think a lot of these things with the post offices, things happen in Montero too sometimes. It really boils down, I think, to the MCC member who ends up posting there, having a relationship with the management, because sometimes they've been able to pull things off that nobody else has been able to, if they have a rapport of some sort. So it's probably worth pursuing, but what you're saying is if you go to the Moss Beach post office, that's what they have. They have the place that's official stuff, which is inside, and then they've got a corkboard outside where anybody can put anything on.
It's not protected though, it's just open.
Right, but we
Well-
post inside on the official stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the corkboard outside is not, it's not a protected. It's
I'm very
not-
friendly. I'm very friendly with the members of the post office. I don't know if I need to bring chocolates or bake some cookies, but I'm willing to actually go in on a day when I don't have an MCC agenda to post and say, how can we streamline this? And
Yeah.
I can commit to doing that before the next meeting so that at least I can figure out if there is some better way to get this to them so that it is up and inside the protected space.
That'd be terrific. And you might want to talk to Dan if you haven't already, because he had something worked out, what he worked out.
All right.
Thoughts on the other items?
I can't see if there's any hands raised or not, so.
Well, I can ask something else. I would say that, sorry, I'm looking back at my note. There was an idea that I really liked, and that was,
Stop sharing.
Focus.
um, polls and surveys on the Zoom, I think would be an interesting thing to try and experiment with.
Say that again, posting.
The polls and surveys on Zoom, I think would be an interesting thing to experiment with if we wanted to do it for specific things.
Yeah.
Be good.
I think that would be interesting to see if it works.
That's a good idea.
So I think we were also thinking about putting it on the MCC website. So say if we were to create a tab that says the 2025 MCC business agenda. So everything that we're working on, even if we haven't tackled it, would have like a hyperlink to be able to give us that data to get survey information. This is how many community members think that this is a priority and support this.
It's not a bad idea. I just think that that's going to be a little harder.
A little more detailed.
A little bit more detailed, but it's completely doable and other sites do it.
Yeah. But I think what you're saying is if we had a meeting, we could just generate a poll right now, like right now.
Right.
And say.
To get
how do you
instant
feel?
real
feedback
time?
in
Yeah.
real time.
Yeah. That's a
Um,
good idea.
and then there was something else, which I've lost somehow, but I'll remember it later.
There's so many things that this brings up. It's gonna take ongoing effort to make many of these things actually happen. I'm glad you got something already set up for September. That's great.
Yeah.
That's a concrete thing.
Sure.
So we'll have to decide what we're doing.
It could be sooner, but they're.
No, they're pretty far out. Yeah, it's hard to get to the.
We can do the post office next week
Anytime.
though, if we wanted, like if we were. If we were given just the permission to take already approved language, which is MCC mission statement, core values, some business items, put that on a flyer. Scott and I have committed to going to the post office and tabling as early as, this month.
So I remembered, at one point, Gus, you probably remember this, there was a spreadsheet of events throughout the year that we were going to target tabling at, and we should dig that back up and update it maybe and just figure out for the rest of the year what events we might actually have a table so people can sign up.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, as we're approaching Pumpkin Festival, and
There's
probably it'd be a
the
lot of
Lighted
stuff.
Boat Festival, there's.
But that's why we thought there's probably stuff that's already happened.
Fish and Fleet,
Not,
yeah.
but you guys already have some mechanisms in place.
But from
like that.
here to the end of the year, we could look at what's happening and just figure out which ones we want to target and then see if people can fill those spots.
Well, you know who knows what's happening is Crystal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why she's here.
Be on the first Friday of December. You can have a booth there for sure.
Exactly. There we go. It's a good one.
That's a good one, yeah.
No. So, how do you guys feel about if we come up with some process for posting regularly, even on our social media or and leveraging the chamber site to start to post? Do you feel comfortable in doing something like that? So you know how you sent the note out in next door, Claire, like to expand on that to when you put the post, let us hear from you kind of thing.
We got
Just that.
actually quite a number of responses to that, which you all saw, I guess.
Yeah.
So like informalizing that process, like can we move forward with formalizing some of these? For instance, I love the idea of doing like a real-time, click survey.
Yeah, you can do that.
So if we could come back together as the group working on this, if we could come back and propose what needs to happen to make that work for us. And, also, the surveys, the petitions, like come back together with an actual skeleton, some actual, like more hardline proposals, how to take us from the idea to the execution. If it involves budget, if there's, what it takes to make it happen.
I think that would be very helpful to if you came back with concrete, like 2 or 3 things for us to deal with. Rather than like a smorgasbord, let's start with a couple of concrete things and.
Sure. And if anybody wants to tell us which ones were their favorites, I mean, can
I
we?
was gonna ask, where do you get the biggest hits? Is it Facebook? Is it Nextdoor or just
Next door.
Nextdoor?
Yeah.
So I'm a little nervous about the social, just because it takes a lot of effort. Not saying it's a bad idea, but I'd want to make sure that if there are any problems via the county council regarding maintaining social presence. I mean, I think we know some of the hazards of that, but it'd be good to know where the boundaries are and how we could keep that very neutral.
I think you bring up a valid point, because it wouldn't be sustainable if somebody who was comfortable doing it all of a sudden is not a member of the council or can't do it. So I mean, I think that has to be more of an organic thing, a process where people who feel comfortable with it are checking in with you and Claire and saying, I would like to post this for the next meeting, making sure that the content is okay. And then like I posted and I literally sent everything to you and Claire when I got responses. So if we can figure stuff out like that, we can come back with some concrete ideas. I think that's a wrap for us.
What do you use for your information, Chris? You said you're not a social guy.
I will not be posting on Nextdoor or Facebook.
No, how do you get your information? People get information in different ways. I'm just saying, it's
Newspaper.
How do you get your community event information? Just listen to meetings? I'm just curious.
I'm not gonna comment on it.
I'm just asking as a point of,
I would
People
say, I'm like Chris, I'm
people use
sort of
different
not
vehicles.
social.
Yeah, people use different vehicles. That's why we talked about multiple ways to get information out, because not everybody, I don't get on Nextdoor very often. I do once in a while, but I don't do it regularly. Like,
Yeah.
how do we broaden the reach? Because people don't all use
And
social.
the
I
point
don't use
isn't to
Facebook.
tax anybody on the
Yeah.
MCC council.
No,
It
yeah,
is
I'm
to
not saying
reach
that. I'm just
community
asking.
members where they are and to figure out how we can diversify what has been done with what can be done and just tap into that.
Yeah.
We're not saying that somebody who feels uncomfortable with it should do X, Y, and Z, but somebody who's fine with it, can.
Well, I was focused more on how do you reach those people who don't use social media so much?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
That's
what-
where it can.
Well, that's why, yeah, we.
Because I fall in that bucket.
Tabling, the
too.
tabling.
Connie was just.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, is it tabling? Is it, how else do we expand the reach? Because a lot
Yeah.
of people don't use it.
I think tabling, the flyer thing, those kinds of things, Coastside Buzz is helpful.
Mhm. You can put stuff in mailboxes too. It does cost money. We'd have to look at the budget for that, but
Yeah,
put the little,
like little
stuff in the
postcards.
mailboxes, the postcards, yeah.
And, at the age-friendly meetings, we've talked about this, and I don't know if anybody actually did it, but we talked about breaking down all the different organizations and getting a master list of every, like, church and whatever that maintains their own mailing list or their own newsletter, and sending our material to them to disseminate to their people.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, we tried to do that, yeah. We took the dignity information and
I
tried to
think
get
it's
that out.
really late. It's 20 after.
Yeah.
Are you ready to quit?
No, I mean, yes, but no.
That's the end of the agenda anyway, but.
If I'm being honest.
We just want to say this is what we're thinking about so far. And we'll get approval from the council when we move forward on anything.
Yeah.
We just started with ideas and we threw everything at the board.
Sounds good.
Sounds great. Good thinking. Looking forward to the concrete proposals.
One thing I did want to raise, just for us to keep in mind and think about, is as part of the the guidelines for the MCC, formal subgroups are subjected to the Brown Act. And as council members assigned to a topic, I think we want to keep that informal, because if it becomes a formal subgroup, which can be a task force that has a name to it, then your group meetings become public meetings and you have to keep minutes.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
So we want
We do
to,
everything to keep it as informal as possible.
so just
That should be a sub.
in how you talk about it, just,
A
yeah,
subgroup.
be mindful
Yeah.
of that.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so council activity, before I forget it, because I forgot last time, I responded to 3 emails to the council. And we'll someday we'll get to a real policy on this, but one was to a person in El Granada who was worried about an ADU going up next to them. One was from somebody in Moss Beach who was worried about a short-term rental that was bothering them. And one was a person in Montera who wanted to thank us for working on stormwater. So I gave the first 2 people contacts with the county as to who they should complain to and get information from. And I said, thank you to the lady in Montera.
Thanks, Claire.
That's very nice, Claire.
What do I tell you? So what else is going on?
So I think everybody knows that the GCSD did not have a meeting. I don't know. Jokingly, I think everybody went on vacation, but I did hear back. I did talk to Barbara. I do know that some of the issues around the parking lot have come up. Posts have been made where they're conflating the GCSD community center parking with the Harbor District. And I just want to be very clear to say that the GCSD remains clear on this, that parking lot has absolutely nothing to do with the GCSD park or community center, and no conversations to date that I'm aware of have happened to have GCSD look at the potential blending in or collaborating with other groups around that. So that's the only.
So they're not part of the same project, but they have everything to do with the cumulative issue that we were
The
discussing.
GCSD is funded to do their own specific things. The parking lot has, or the park itself, the community center has very specific parameters, and it has never included overflow parking for Caltrans or the Harbor District.
Well,
I mean, if people wanted to, I think GCSD has not been unfriendly or unwilling to hear me at any level. It's just, it's never come up. And I just want to be very clear that when those conversations are being had, several people brought up the GCSD Community Center tonight as part of the Harbor District, and it's not the same issue. Nobody has gone to the GCSD that I'm aware of and said, would you consider expanding X so that this can happen? So if this council wants that to happen, you know, prepare something for me to say at the next GCSD meeting, and I'm happy to convey it.
May I? I think what I heard tonight from others was that they were looking at this as how could you collaborate to alleviate some of the parking issues, not necessarily provide all the parking, but to sort of collaborate with the other stakeholders to figure out some alternative solutions to cover some of that parking. So some of it could come from, maintaining some of the skate park lot or some other alternative. But yeah, just alternative solutions.
But to date, all I'm saying is to date, I don't think anybody has. I'm not saying that the GCSD is not willing to hear that or entertain that. They've been actually very amenable to hearing a lot of different ideas, started a task force to respond to the school currently. So they've been very receptive to kind of looking at issues as they emerge. They just haven't gotten that request from Caltrans, Harbor District, a member of the MCC, so.
Apparently they GCSD did hear from Caltrans on that, and they just decided not to have a conversation with that at the board level.
When did that happen, Chris?
I can't.
Well, then we shouldn't speak to it unless we have the details. All I know is
we're getting away from council
It's a valid
activity.
question
not to me.
for you to take to GCSD.
You want me to take that question to the GCSD?
Yeah.
I see Barbara is on. Barbara, would you like to comment on, I mean, this is unusual, but would you like to say anything?
I'm not quite sure what the issue is here.
What?
I'm not quite sure, you're saying that, I'm not quite sure what the issue is here. There is a new proposal for parking down the way.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Can barely hear you.
Let me get closer.
Oh, better.
That's better.
Oh, that's better.
I can't, hello?
Oh.
We're here.
Okay. I can't speak for GCSD, I'm just one board member, but we have a project that's going through a process right now. It will be coming to the MCC for review sometime in the next few months. There will be an opportunity for more questions. Right now, GCSD doesn't have a position on this new proposed parking.
Can't hear you.
Barbara, it's almost impossible to hear you. I will send Chris's question to Hope and to the board for a potential response, and we can go from there.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Barbara.
If I can jump into next agendas real quick, because it's coming up right now. We're gonna have to be really careful at the next meeting if it goes the way I think it's gonna go, which is you guys are gonna be writing this letter that we're gonna be looking at about what we talked about tonight. And we're also gonna be doing a pre-application workshop on the Burnham Strip Park. And it's gonna be really, really important that we keep the two issues separate. And they're not totally separate because they do have implications for each other. But they're going to be, I think we're probably going to end up doing both of them. We're going to do both of them at the same meeting. And if anybody thinks that's a horrible idea, please say so. But it's going to take some real mental concentration to separate the two issues and give both of them due attention.
Well, how do you feel about that, Claire? Because it seems like it sounds like what you're saying and what we're kind of prepared for is that that could become potentially contentious and difficult to navigate when it's together.
It's confusing for sure.
Do you feel like it should be separated? Because I see the rationale behind that.
I kind of see there are advantages to doing them both on the same night because we're looking at the total picture. There are disadvantages. Well, I think I felt pressured because we did all this listening session thing tonight. There may be decisions being made fairly soon about some of these topics. And it feels like we can't really waste our time. If we're going to have any impact, we probably should move ahead. And at the same time, we have a referral from the planning department on the Burnham Strip Park. And they're not willing to wait forever. They'll wait for a little bit, but not forever. So I'm not sure.
I think you've done a really good job as I've become a new member to moderation and to running these meetings. And I think that it is your purview to run this meeting and to set the agenda and kind of figure out how questions come in and information goes out. So, I mean, I have faith in whatever you decide to do. I would just prepare yourself for the potential best outcome and how to navigate that.
You have many suggestions?
Let it fly.
I mean, I think you've been really good at when it gets to a point of contentiousness to stop that and to curtail that. And I think just kind of reinforcing that and trying to maybe preemptively state what the goals or the objectives are to the group before any presentation, so that we can get to both of the presentations and then maybe come out with some useful information.
I think we're all gonna be experts on this area, but by the time this is over.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
So I didn't mean to embarrass you about the newsletter. I was just thinking that's an example of something that kind of, different people from that are sitting at this table now came up with this and said, we're committed to this, but are we still committed to it? I don't know.
So Scott sent me his piece on Zone Zero. Connie sent me her pieces on age-friendly and urgent care. Kevin's gonna edit his piece on outreach.
I just waited for my outreach thing until tonight because I have an update, so.
You were gonna send me one on seal coat?
I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, right. That one.
I'll look for it.
Yes, we just resend it to me and you were gonna send me something on bullet points on small items.
Yeah.
That was.
Sort of the rest.
The other, okay.
Yeah.
You send it to me?
I don't know.
Okay.
And then Gus and I talked about like
You'll
the
send it to me.
process of him getting that and editing the content and then me putting together the actual newsletter would be roughly, we thought like before back to school, like right around that time. So that is
Well,
what's
material starts to get stale.
right.
Right, so like I need to update the healthcare thing, I think,
Mm.
whatever, but yeah, I mean, if we, if material can get stale for going this long period of time, that's all.
Well, if something becomes irrelevant, I think that anybody who's written something and there's an update to it, you can add a substantive update to it. Fine. If you can't, maybe message Claire and Kimberly and say.
It's
"This is
actually
really
Gus.
Or, I mean, I'm talking about if they're saying something is no longer relevant, should we take this off of the actual newsletter itself and cover something else? They should probably send that to you or Kimberly.
So what do you think is a timetable that's realistic?
Timetable is realistic. I mean, I think the pieces that I have, I can edit by late next week.
Okay, and then we wouldn't have to rewrite everything, at least not totally.
Come on.
Do you need help? Because for the next few days, I will have moments where I can read something and edit, like one-off tasks. So if you want to assign something for that, I could do something. That would
That's
help.
helpful. I'll think about that. I mean, I think I can handle that. Thank you. I mean,
Okay.
for that.
Well, the offer stands if you need it.
Thank you.
And I'll try to find what I sent you and send it again.
Yes.
Does your offer stand for graphics and to?
I'm not,
I'm kidding, I'm only kidding.
I'm not as good with the graphics.
Anything else from, for either coming agendas or council activity? Or are we ready to adjourn?
Just really quickly, if anybody
Meeting
cares, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, you finish first.
If anybody is interested in Caltrain as an issue, they just did a pretty in-depth study of the vulnerability of the Caltrain system to climate change effects, and they're going to hold a virtual public meeting to report the results of that on July 16th. It'll be 6 to 7 p.m. on Zoom. If anybody is interested in that, you can let me know. I'll forward you the link, or if you want to put it on the website or something, that's fine. Let me know, and let me know who I should send it to. You got it.
Okay. Anybody else?
Chris, did you have your hand up for something? I saw you like.
Yeah. Well, just a note, just from the many meetings that I've attended, for the whether or not to separate or keep those two items for the same agenda. From the outside, I would suggest if you can have them on the same night, because it's gonna be the same people. And I see this all the time at city council. People mentally and emotionally can't separate the project, so they're gonna talk about both projects when they make their comments anyway. So if you have them both on the agenda, it's actually probably just gonna keep you from hearing every single comment twice. So just from getting a meeting through a meeting in a period of time that everybody is okay with, that might be a prudent idea.
To the extent you're looking for commentary on that, I agree with that 100%. I think it's going to wind up being far more efficient to have them both on the same day.
There'll have to be two separate items, though.
Sure,
Yeah. Okay. All right, so
You can
that's,
control, like, encouraging people not to duplicate questions or, just frame it at the very beginning.
yeah,
We're doing this one right now. All your comments about the other thing, wait till. You just have to set people's expectations.
yeah, we're gonna do the pre-app workshop first. And then we'll do the letter.
Is GCSD participating in that?
They don't know about it.
They don't know about it. Well,
now
Barbara
they
knows
do.
about it.
They don't know about it.
It's very awkward. Barbara, I'm sorry to do this to you, but we'll be in touch.
Are you making comment on agenda items for the future?
Yeah, well, sure. Not for the next one, but for the ongoing, yes.
Yeah, so the Aaron's Beach Hotel is, got some legs now with its planning process. It's got an application and a CDP, has been submitted, and it's gonna have this architectural design review tomorrow, and so it's definitely heating up.
Wow.
Yeah. I think I'll probably go to that.
I forgot something on council activity, if I could just mention it. I did reach out, we got those notifications from the infrastructure projects that we did for Chris that we submitted. And so I reached out to Marisol, who connected me with someone else, who connected me now with someone else. I did reach out to see what the status was or how we could get to next steps on those, because we had a number of things that were considered category A and B within the I was focusing on the telecommunication area. So they have kind of punted against saying they're not sure, they're waiting on funding from the federal, the category A signified that it would be kind of ripe for funding. Or from FEMA or from, emergency response type stuff, but now they're saying that they need to wait to see what was happening with the bills that were getting passed from the federal level. So I'll keep following up on that to see, because they were regarding cell phone towers up in Montera, and then redundancy in the lines, that we were looking for. So I'll keep following up on that.
Yeah, that looked really useful. I'm glad you're gonna follow up on it.
Yeah, I'll keep
Claire, just really quick, and I'm sorry if it's off agenda topic, but we're gonna send this letter regarding the parking lot at the Harbor District. I connected you with Susie, but did you want to be able to add those signatures, the over 800 signatures now of community members who have questions or concerns about the parking lot to that letter.
I don't know. I'll leave that up to the people writing the letter,
Okay.
which are Kimberly and Gus.
So all right. And Melinda McNaughton is here. She was one of the authors. Dan, Susie presented. She's one of the organizers. So
Yeah, so tell me if I've got this wrong, but I anticipate that we would bring a draft letter to the next meeting.
Nothing's going to be passed.
Then the council would discuss if it hits the mark and make adjustments and any new input from that meeting, and then we would update the letter and then vote.
Yeah, you're not just going to send a letter. You're going to bring a letter for us to look at.
Okay.
That's my understanding. Okay. Are we ready?
No,
Let's do it.
let's do it.
No?
there was an item from the consent agenda that we were.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
consent agenda. Yeah, I
Oh,
had that too, to.
The minutes.
Yes, the minutes.
So I pulled the minutes because there's some, overall the minutes are good, but there were just some names that were incorrect and some grammatical things that need correcting. And there are quite a few of them, so I don't think we can look through them at this meeting. But I'd like to just make those corrections and bring it back to the next meeting for approval, if people agree.
So do you need a motion on that?
I guess we should have a motion on that.
So I motion to postpone approval of those meeting minutes until Kimberly has a chance to edit and correct them.
Second. You call the roll?
Sure. Kevin. Tired, sorry. Look at me, yes. Scott,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Gus,
Yes.
Connie, yes.
We done now?
Yes.
Okay, I guess, but we have to go through this all the time. Do we have to vote on adjourning or not?
No.
We do not.
No, we
Okay.
do not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank